This is a mysterious story that Canadian police officers are still puzzling over. It began on the 30th of July, 1985. Two girlfriends Nicole and Jennifer got together to go to the pool and agreed to meet at 11 o'clock in the lobby of an apartment complex in Toronto. Jen came first. After some 15 minutes, she got tired of waiting. So she called Nicole's mom. She didn't even worry because her daughter had already gone to the hall. However, since then, Nicole has not been seen again. Nicole Louis was the only daughter of Janet and Artemorin, who by the summer of 1985 made the final decision to separate, and even separated, preparing to file for divorce. For his wife and heiress, Art, who worked as a dry cleaning car driver, rented an apartment in a giant 20-story building in the Etobicoke district of the Canadian city of Toronto until Nicole disappeared. This residential complex, which included a gym, sauna, indoor pool, tennis court, and many other amenities. It was considered absolutely safe. According to neighbors, many quite calmly let their children go for a walk alone. At that time, the area where Nicole lived was very safe. No one would have ever expected that something like this could happen there, so this event really shocked a lot of people. This happened at a time when it was customary to allow their children to walk on their own. At least until July 30th, 1985. It was on this day that 8-year-old Nicole disappeared. At 10 in the morning, the girl's mother Janet had already met several children. She set up an impromptu kindergarten in the apartment for other residents. Half an hour later, the woman asked her daughter to go downstairs for the mail. After returning, Nicole told her parent that she was going to swim with her friend Jennifer, who lived next door. After receiving her mother's consent, Nicole changed into a peach-colored swimsuit, put on red sneakers, and tied a bright green ribbon on her head. Married fearlessly let her daughter go, because there was a worker in the pool who was responsible for cleanliness and safety. Morin packed a white t-shirt, a towel, swimming goggles, green shorts, a pink comb, and a bottle of sunscreen into her bag. The pool was open. Having gathered, the girl called her friend, and they agreed to meet in the lobby in a few minutes. Around 11 o'clock, Nicole said goodbye to her mother and closed the door behind her, and disappeared. One of the residents of the building, however, told the police that he saw a girl next to the elevator. However, Nicole did not come down to the lobby. Jennifer waited for her friend for about a quarter of an hour, then called her mother and asked why Nicole was so late. Jeanette didn't attach any importance to Jennifer's words at that moment, and Jennifer, tired of waiting, went to the pool alone. Mom missed her daughter only at 15:00. She searched for several hours throughout the residential complex and closer to 18:00 called the police and reported the child missing. Nicole's unexpected disappearance attracted everyone's attention, and the police, starting on July 30th, regularly combed the impressive residential complex, more than 400 apartments. The version that the girl was killed was also carefully worked out. Detectives carefully checked all the places where it was possible to hide the remains of the body: laundry, technical rooms, garbage cans. Cars were also subjected to inspection. In total, for a year, the police interviewed about 5,000 people who could have known at least something about what happened to Nicole after the doors of her home apartment closed behind her. Among these people, there were several hundred people who committed early sexual crimes. The search for Morin is considered one of the largest in the history of the Canadian police. The task force, assembled only to investigate Nicole's case, numbered 20 people. In total, the police spent more than 15,000 hours of working time to get to the truth. As a result, The detectives were so desperate that they took calls and listened to the versions of even mentally unstable people, hoping to find at least some clue. But for 9 months, no one was able to provide any reliable information about the whereabouts of Nicole. In March 1986, the task force was disbanded, but the search for the girl continued. At the end of the year, the police re-interviewed all the residents of the house in which the child disappeared. But again, to no avail. By the way, in the 2010 year, Nicole's school friend Melissa joined the official investigation, who is still interested in this case. When we were little, we had a lot of fun together. I will do my best to see Nicole again someday, Melissa said on the TV show. Since the 2001 year, the police began to print posters on which Morin, who had grown up with the help of computer technology, was depicted. However, this method did not help. The girl's parents, who were briefly united by a common misfortune, did not sit still either. Art returned to Janet, and together they turned to almost every private detective who specialized in the search for the missing. This amateur activity, by the way, extremely irritated the police. A few days after the disappearance of the baby, posters appeared on the streets of Toronto with a photo of the girl, and the inscription, "Have you seen Nicole?" The amount of remuneration for any reliable information at first was $50,000, but soon rose to $100,000. By 1987, Janet and Art had divorced. The man quit his job and founded a small headquarters that coordinated the search for Nicole. Morin devoted his whole life to finding his missing daughter. He printed leaflets and sent them to North America and dozens of Canadian embassies around the world. And he himself left the city more than once, trying to find at least some traces. Volunteers were selling carnations in downtown Toronto to raise as much money as possible to search for Nicole. So they managed to get $15,000. This money was spent on printing posters and paying for the services of private detectives. Nicole's mother Janet died in 2007 year, never knowing what happened to her daughter. But the girl's father to this day does not lose hope of finding her. Art carefully stores all of Nicole's baby things in one big trunk. In 2000, he organized a press conference where he said, "I can't believe it's been 25 years since I've seen my daughter. I believe that she is alive, and I believe that we are able to find her. Everyone probably can reproach me with the fact that I am deluding myself in vain, and she has been dead for a long time." However, the police fully support Art. Detectives still believe that what happened to Nicole was not a murder. Moreover, according to law enforcement agencies, the girl is most likely alive, but for some reason she cannot make herself felt, due to the fact that the police and volunteers had quite a few real leads. There are an impressive number of versions of what could have happened to Nicole. The first one. The girl's voluntary departure from home after she went missing. A notebook was found in her bedroom with a phrase written by Nicole a few months before the incident, which read, "I'm going to disappear. I really don't want to think she's dead, but she didn't show up. Could you say that my hope is an illusion?" Claimed Art Morin in the 2010 year. The second one. There was a hypothesis that the girl was alive, but for some reason she lost her memory. It is also assumed that due to the small age at the time of the disappearance, the events of Nicole's former life in her memory may become so blurred that she will not be able to identify herself with the wanted girl, even if her freedom is not currently being restricted. The situation was confused by the girls, who at various times reported to the Canadian police and the media that they were the disappeared Nicole Morin. Often they accused their own parents of kidnapping themselves from the Morins. The press considered such reports to be the result of a conflict with parents, a desire to attract attention to themselves, and a mental disorder. That is why the police thoroughly interrogated all the girls who came to them and said that they were the same disappeared Nicole Morin. Third, at some point, the investigation began to suspect the brother of the girl's father, who lived in Quebec, who was found guilty of murdering Morin's sister Gertrude in 1961 year. The police, however, determined that he was not in Toronto at the time of Nicole Forth's disappearance. One of the witnesses insisted that on the day of Nicole's disappearance, about 45 minutes before the girl disappeared, there was an unknown woman in the building on the West Pier, where everyone knew each other well. This woman was of medium height, with shoulder-length blonde hair, aged about 35. She was holding a notebook in her hand and was apparently reading something in it. A sketch was compiled. The portrait was printed in newspapers, but the woman, whose appearance was restored with the help of a sketch, did not contact the police herself and was never identified. The 5th Detective Sergeant Madeleine Tretter, who had been dealing with the girl's case for many years, believed that the girl had been abducted before meeting her friend. The detective could not decide on the answer to the question whether the abduction was planned in advance or an improvisation of the criminal. Pedophiles were most often accused of kidnapping. Sometimes accusations were made against religious fundamentalists who, allegedly knowing about the strained relations of the spouses and their imminent divorce, thus tried to arrange the fate of the child. In September 1988, the Toronto police considered the confession of a certain 41-year-old American, Lovey Lee Ridley, a man without definite and permanent occupation, in the commission of the murders of 30 people. Among other things, Ridley stated that he was the one who kidnapped Nicole Morin and then handed her over to some person. The police checked Riddle's testimony in detail, but found no evidence of his claims about the fate of Marine 6. There is a version according to which the girl was killed. In October 2014, the police spent 2 days combing the countryside near Barrie, near Tobeka, where Marina disappeared 29 years before. Billy Joe Player, who was 11 years old when Nicole went missing, claimed that she heard a certain girl screaming just 2 days after Nicole disappeared. All we heard was this terrible, terrible scream. It was like the cry of a little girl whose life is in danger. Billy was then near her home, in a wooded area with her mother and sister. Billy said that they ran to the house and called the neighbors, who also claimed that they heard the screams themselves. Her mother dialed the emergency number 911. The police, who arrived on call, then searched the place of the alleged crime, but found nothing. For the past few years, Billy has been tormented by nightmares related to the fate of Nicole. She again reported to the police in the 2014 year after repeated searches on this territory. The police again could not find any evidence indicating the fate of the girl. First of all, the residents of the building were under suspicion of committing a crime. It had to be someone who lived in the building, a police spokesman claimed. The chances of meeting a stranger in this elevator are almost zero. Nicole's disappearance was just one of a series of mysterious disappearances of girls in Canada. Christina Jessup, 9, went missing at her Queensville home in October before Nicole disappeared. Sharon Morningstar Keena, also 9 years old, was abducted in January of 1983, and 11-year-old Allison in July of 1986 year. All of them were killed. Their bodies, unlike Nicole Morin, were found by the police. The Toronto police admitted the possibility of the involvement of Francis Carl Roy, who raped and killed Allison Breeds. However, the investigation failed to prove his connection with this incident. 35 years have passed since little Nicole disappeared without leaving any trace, and the police have not moved a step in the investigation of this mysterious case. However, to this day, many do not lose hope that Nicole Morin will still be found someday.